Morning, beloved. Welcome to Transformation Ministries Sunday morning snippet. I am Pastor Hamlin, your host, and I'm sorry we didn't have a snippet last week, but I think I've been intentionally being left blank until I did this one today. It's one I've been hesitant about doing. I've been writing a little paper on it, and it's definitely not a popular subject. It's definitely not not popular, and many will find it offensive. I apologize if you do, but that's, you're either offended at God or you're offended at the world. So here we go. If I had to name this, I would call it the second deception of Eve. We all know the first deception, when Eve was deceived by Satan in the garden, when he told Eve that they would be just like God if they ate from the tree of the fruit of good, the fruit of the tree of good and evil. Knowledge. I'm sorry. They'll be like God. They'll have the knowledge of God, but God had told them if they ate from it, they're going to die. Well, they didn't die physically when they did, but they did eventually die. They died a spiritual death at that point, and that was the point of the fall, after Adam actually sinned and brought man down. But that's another time. But that was the first deception, when Satan deceived Eve. Second deception came much later. Actually, it came more recently in the last 70 years or so. It started a little earlier, but it started in earnest in the 1950s, 1960s. It's hard to put an actual date on it, but it happened in that time frame. But Satan came to women and convinced them that their God-given roles were unvaluable. The roles God gave women were not valuable. Only the roles that God gave men were valuable. But he did it outside of a religious context. He didn't tell these women that the God-given roles. They didn't use God-given roles. He just said, your roles, what you're doing here is wrong because it's not valuable. There's no value in it. And what are these roles? God gave women the roles of mother, nurturer, maker of the home, which I believe is probably more important than any role that the man has. God gave men a role of protector, provider. Now, it's protector and provider is much more physically demanding role, but it's the one God gave us. God gave women the role of wife. God gave man the role of husband, who is the nurturer, who is the provider. Mother is the nurturer of the children. Mother is born and bears the children, carries them for 9 months and then gives birth. Now, once these roles that role became invaluable, as Satan would put it, that is not a valued role because you don't make any money at it. How much money do you make as a housewife? I know my mother was a housewife and she didn't make a dime. Didn't make a dime. But she loved it nonetheless. It was her God-given role. Many women of that generation loved that. They didn't mind going out and making a living. Even in Proverbs 31, woman ministers to her husband, along with making things on the side. Maybe making a little extra money, maybe having a business on the side. But a primary role is keeping the home. keeping everybody fed, keeping everybody clothed, nurturing your children. Yes, it may be thankless at times, but it is probably the most important role that is around. Satan tells him, well, the men can do that too. Well, I'm sorry, we're not wired for it. Our brains are not wired for it. No matter how we can learn how to do things with kids. We can learn how to, but it's more rote memorization than anything else. Many women I've talked to, many women I know, they don't need to be taught how to nurture a child. They know it. It's instinctive. It's inbred in them. So that is their role. Wife, husband. Now, where this has become pervasive is that many of the roles that men have and women have, they've started to clash. The women have been convinced, and this is widespread, not everyone, but it's widespread, that women in America and women in this world believe that the wife and mother is invaluable because they don't get paid. They may think because other reasons, but they don't get paid for it. It's not a valuable role, and it has been rolled out as other things in the feminist movement, and they've tried to break down all the roles so women can be men. That has other connotations also. They can do the things that men can do. Physically, yeah, well, there's a lot of things that men can, or women can do that men have traditionally done. That women they are doing currently. The question isn't whether they can, but whether they should. Is it a part of their God-given role? Is it a part of the role that God gave them? Well, what about single mothers? Well, that's something else. We can talk about that later. But where that is especially wrong is when it comes into the church. God gives the criteria for elders and pastors, bishops. He gives it. 1 Timothy 1, I believe it is. And it is one of their criteria is you have to be husband to one wife. And I believe in my heart that it was written that way specifically so there's no ambiguity. So a woman cannot be a husband. Sorry. It was pointed out to me, well, maybe she wears the pants in the family. That's okay. Well, that's not okay, but that's not being submissive to your husband. But if it's, I lost my train of thought. You can't. A woman cannot be a husband to anybody, no matter what. She may wear the pants in the family, but she's still not the husband. So what's the consequences of that? Women aren't pastors. Biblically. Charles Neiman, a pastor that I know, said if there's something in the Bible once, it's important. But if it's in the Bible twice, you better take heart. And that's in the Bible twice. It's in 1 Timothy and in Titus. Husband to one wife. And it also says in two separate places, Ephesians 5 being one of them, that wives be submissive to your husbands. That don't mean subservient. That don't mean you're a slave. That doesn't mean that you grovel at your husband's feet. It means you submit to leadership. Just the same way as you submit to a boss. And in the Greek, that the term, I don't remember the term, but it's a military term. Everybody is in the military. Everybody is subservient. Is subjective to doing somebody else. The private is subject to the sergeant to the captain to the general. It's not a hierarchy of servitude, but it's a hierarchy of submission. You submit to the orders of those appointed above you. Similar to the Hebrews 13, where we are supposed to submit ourselves to government, to the authorities appointed above us. That is the deception. And there's a lot of consequences that come along with it. And we're seeing them today. We're seeing a lot of suicides in men. There was a study done, I don't remember the exact date, but it said women have never been more miserable at the time of the study, and it's been 10 or 15 years, so it's in this century. Have never been more miserable doing what they're doing. Being away from families, being away from their children, being away from their husbands. We've also seen a rise in divorces. And what's really sad is the divorce rate in the church is as bad as it is in the world. And that's sad. That tells me, is there that much adultery going on? Is there that much infidelity in marriages that's going on? Because infidelity is the only legitimate reason for divorce amongst Bible-believing Christians anyway. But many are not. Many are of convenience. Well, I just don't. I had my thing with this guy, so I'll just toss him aside. When I listen to the prayers on Daily Audio Bible during the week, it's wrought with people, with couples that are having troubles and divorcing, and not for sexual immorality, not for infidelity, but for any reason, many reasons. But that is how women were deceived back in the 50s and 60s, and many men were deceived right along with it, the same as Adam was deceived in the beginning. He bought into it. First Eve was deceived, brought her husband, Adam, into the sin. He committed the sin. They were thrown out, fall in the world. And now, 2,000 years later, Eve is deceived again, trying to blur the lines between men and women in their roles, and now in their beings. Now we see with some of the movements that are going on that men and women, the terms men and women are interchangeable. So where do we go from here? Where are we going from here? Is this coming into the church? Yes, it is. I pray to God that this church stays true to the Bible and the teachings of the Bible. I pray that your church stays true to the Bible in all aspects. We can't pick and choose what we want to believe and what we don't want to believe. We still do need to be discerning, and we do need to do what God tells us to do. God laid out the format for the church. That's why he had apostles. That's why he had prophets, to set up the church, to put it forth. Maybe we should bring back the office of the apostle. Then maybe we can get back to the original plan. Well, with that, I hope nobody is too offended. I'm still hesitant about actually publishing this, but I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got something from it. I hope you learned from it. So, good day. God bless you. Go serve your King.